Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Policy Development and Review Committee meeting for November 14th, 2024. I'm Director Pettingill, filling in for Director Rainbow as he's unavailable today, so I'll be chairing the meeting. And as I call the meeting to order, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is essentially being held on the traditional territory of the Lillooet Nation. I'm located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish-Lillooet, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. With that, I will call for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Director Ford, second by Director Birch-Jones. All those in favor? Motion carries. And do we have closed items?
Not today.
Okay. And there's no rise and report. Okay. For the consent agenda, is there anything anyone would like to pull?
Move adoption of the consent agenda.
Okay, moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Ford. All those in favor? Motion carries. And new business.
Okay.
Oh, did I miss something?
Business arising, but I don't think there is any.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I think no business arising. Is there a staff report for the committee meetings schedule? That's the next item.
Raylene is available to speak to item 7.1.
Okay, excellent. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Raylene Rehill, Legislative Coordinator. Through the chair, this direction request is being brought forward so the committee may consider setting dates for 2025 meetings. So potential options as outlined in the direction request included: number one, scheduling bi-monthly meetings on the first Wednesday of the month, starting at 10 a.m. beginning February 2025, with the exception of August when no meetings are scheduled. Option two, schedule monthly meetings on the first Wednesday or Thursday of the month, starting at 10 a.m. beginning in January 2025. With the exception of January, meeting could be held the third Thursday, and in August when no meetings are scheduled. The third option, status quo, committee meetings schedule not be set in advance and meetings be convened as needed, or another option as per the committee's discretion. If the committee passes a resolution today providing direction to set meetings in 2025, staff will bring a detailed meeting calendar report to your next meeting for consideration. Thank you. Were there any questions?
Director Ford?
Thank you for the report. I think that the only piece that I need some help with is understanding what the workflow or what the task list for this committee looks like. Do we have sort of a basket of all of the things that we want to accomplish over the year? And do they have defined dates that we can put into a calendar? Or is this something that's, as items come up, we'll deal with them as needed? I think that helps us determine how frequently the meetings need to be scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, this committee will be seeing the procedure bylaw review in the new year. And also on this meeting calendar today, agenda, we have the code of conduct. And in that report, it did say that there would be some set meeting dates depending on when the committee wished to set meetings. It should be noted that any time at the discretion of the chair, a meeting could be convened if there was time-sensitive items.
Director Birch-Jones?
Thank you. My preference is for the first option, starting in January and then every other month on the first Wednesday. That works for me anyway. And it seems like a reasonable, I think every month to me is a little too frequent, although I know we can cancel meetings. I'm also not in favor of the third option. Not just making it up as we go along is way too much work for everybody. So let's choose something. Although in the absence of Tony, and Jenna. I'll just move the first one.
I'll second.
Just Director Belsham, just before I accept that.
Thank you. Through the chair, just for clarity, option one is meetings starting February 2025 versus January.
And before we move this, can I just clarify? I mean, my sense is that there's a whole lot of work for this committee to do as a whole. But I also understand there's a huge staff piece to that. And so I just want to make sure that the board committee isn't becoming the obstacle for moving forward. So do we have clarity on how much? Like, would we be an obstacle for only meeting every other month? Or my sense is there is a fair bit of committee discussion to be had. I'm just not sure if we're going to be ready to do that monthly or in the near term. Director Ford?
Yeah, I think to that point and to Viv's point, it's easier to have meetings scheduled in the calendar from a legislative perspective, that if we've got them booked and then we cancel them because we aren't ready or staff doesn't have timelines for stuff to be done every month, we can easily cancel every other month, but it's easier to have them scheduled and canceled than to try and schedule in between or ad hoc. So my recommendation would be that we go with every month and then cancel them when not needed. Is that easier for staff?
CO Paul, did you? Or...
I would go with the direction of preference of the committee. I know in the past, the committee has asked for monthlies and then to be canceled if needed. We can go along with that. That has been working. We have been canceling them if needed. The flip side could be doing bi-monthly and having one more if needed. If we see a backlog of work, either option will work for the organization.
Okay, Director Belsham, did I see a hand?
Yeah, so just for clarity, I understand that option one, which was bi-monthly meetings, was currently moved and seconded.
Okay, so are we wanting to change?
Would you like me
Or
to?
would be a
withdraw
friendly
that?
amendment, I guess? So option two is,
No, option
I
two
guess.
is to do them as needed.
Oh, okay.
Can I,
Yeah.
Yes, CO Paul, please.
with the two option, with it first and seconded, and with the rotation of work that's happening at this time, I think the bi-monthly would work for most of the time, and canceling them might be more work. With the flow of work that's coming through, I feel like the only impediment might be an EAD review, or sorry, an EAD, the results of the EAD workshop might need a special meeting, but aside from that, I feel like the bi-monthly would work.
Okay, so it sounds like what I'm hearing, I think, is that people want to stick with the motion on the floor, which is the first option. So that's moved and seconded, which is every other month. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to flip through my agenda here on half a screen. We are now on to the Electoral Area Directors Committee terms of reference. Is there a presentation on this one? CIO Paul?
Hi, everyone. Just a quick overview, and then I can just put it to the floor for questions. This was reviewed by the Electoral Area Directors Committee. Some of the feedback was a result of a workshop that happened prior to the terms of reference review. In that workshop, there were a lot of requests that came out of it that are being collected into a report. However, in discussions about the TOR, it came to the conclusion that this terms of reference is very simple, and the goal is to have it simply built and have it refer to the procedures manual for delegated authority and the different the different bylaws and policies. We don't have a terms of reference, so the feedback was to support this terms of reference, and then the results of the workshop may inform changes. However, at this point, they might be completely outside of the terms of reference and in different policies and bylaws. So that was the feedback from the committee. They supported the terms of reference as presented, recognizing that it is in the most simple form and many of it referring to other policies of the SLRD. The bylaws of the SLRD.
Okay. And do we have a sense of once the that workshop is complete, will that come to this committee next, or will that be going straight to the board for the next discussion?
The hope is to bring it to the electoral area directors first, so they feel like they were heard and everything that was said was captured in the recommendations and in the report. At that point, from there, my suggestion would be policy and development committee or board review. It really depends on, I would ask this group for their direction on that. This is if you want to use the policy and development and review committee to its fullest, this could be a good landing spot for that. And that's where I said we might need a special meeting once in a while for this. However, it also could be handled at the board level.
Okay, thank you. See, Director Stoner is joining us. Hello, Director Stoner.
Hi, so
Welcome.
sorry I'm late.
Yeah, no problem. We understand. Just so you know, we're on the Electoral Area Directors Committee Terms of Reference. And there aren't any questions so far. There's a recommendation. I'm not sure if you had anything you wanted to ask before there's a motion.
I didn't have any questions on this item. Thanks.
Okay. Director Birch-Jones?
Thank you. I think it was discussed fully at the EAD. I'm the only one that had any problems with a little bit of the wording. But the other guys, I think that it's simple enough and broad enough that it meets our purposes. And of course, we can amend it based on sort of more information in future, but I agree with CAO Paul about a lot of the references are going to send us back to the policy and procedure document anyway. And so I think it's a good working document. I think we can work with it as it is. And I'm actually grateful that it's fairly simple and gives us a lot of room at the EAD to bring topics that are important of interest to us. So I'm happy to move it. The board policy number 39-2024 EAD committee terms of reference be adopted.
Okay, just before you move it, I see Director Ford's hand.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a question. In the composition of the committee, it states the 4 area directors. It doesn't indicate that the board chair is an ex officio member. Is that not required to be in the terms of reference, or has that been removed?
Director Belsham?
Chair, the ex officio is outlined in the procedure bylaw.
Okay. Does it not have a place in this document for just clarity so that you don't have to refer back? Go ahead. Or sorry, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, and Ms. Belsham, did you want to respond to that?
I believe CAO Paul had her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Hey, through the chair, one of the directions that we're taking, and many organizations are taking, is this avoidance of duplicating information and instead referring to it. Because what has happened in the past is if the same information is in multiple policies or bylaws, when one's updated, the others have to be updated and they're often missed, and it continues to be out of line. So you'll see it in all the work moving forward, it will be referring to another policy if it needs to be referred to, but not repeating embedded into others.
Thanks,
Sorry
that
to
satisfies my question, so I'm happy to second Director Birch-Jones's motion to approve or to recommend.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Birch-Jones, second by Director Ford. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Next, we are on to the Board Code of Conduct Policy Review. And is there a small presentation on this one? Ms. Belsham?
Thank you, Angela Belsham, Director of Legislative and Corporate Services. The purpose of this report is to present results of the jurisdictional review of Board Council Code of Conduct policies and bylaws, and to seek committee direction on the content for staff to include within an updated policy to be presented to the committee at a future date. At the July 29th, 2024 committee meeting, members requested a review of member municipality code of conduct bylaws and policies, noting the recent updates undertaken by the District of Squamish in 2022 and the Resort Municipality of Whistler in 2023. The SLRD member municipality codes of conduct were subsequently distributed to the committee for their review. In preparation for this report, staff have completed a cursory review of a number of local government codes of conduct as outlined in the report. I would like to emphasize that the process of developing a code provides an opportunity for the board to consider what is most important to their own situations. The process provides the opportunity to reflect on the values of responsible conduct as an enabler of good governance. So subject to the committee directions, staff are proposing to bring forward a draft policy for consideration that includes a section based on the UBCM Model Code of Conduct, which references foundational principles of responsible conduct, including integrity, accountability, leadership, respect, and collaboration. And this is based on the immense amount of work that has been done through UBCM, LGMA, around code of conduct work over the past number of years. Also within the report, there were 13 provisions that were indicated that are commonly included in other local government codes of conduct. And then there are other provisions specified by the committee for inclusion. So staff, when we do bring something back, it will evaluate and include best practice wording from other jurisdictions for each provision within the draft policy. We would also look at ensuring that there's alignment in reference to legislation and other SLRD policies and bylaws that involve director conduct. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Are there any questions from anyone? Director Birch-Jones.
It may be more of a comment. I was really grateful. Thank you very much, Ms. Belsham, for sending on those various codes of conduct. And I looked at them, and I looked at Lillooet first, and I loved it, partly because it's only 3 pages. And then I put off reading Squamish's because it was a hefty 16 friggin' pages. But I did. I thought, well, what can we take out? 7 of those pages, I think, at least, it seemed about half of them were in the Squamish version, all to do with how to deal with a complaint. And living in Lillooet, I hear the CBC from Kamloops and the hooflera with the mayor and council there. Currently, you know, a surprise that all his legal costs aren't covered in the dispute. And, oh, what happens now? He's locked out of the office, he's refusing, et cetera, et cetera. It's super controversial, and it would test any code of conduct. So I actually think the detail in the Squamish code of conduct around complaints is certainly worth a serious look for at least guidance to dealing with that. You know, I mean, I hope we don't have to deal with that ever, but it's certainly better than the others in terms of giving guidance to do, and to have those things written out ahead of time is really helpful. Some of the details, like the limits on 90 days on things and the amounts of money, I would hesitate to nail those in our own policies, but that sort of details that the board could look at and decide if they were practical or not, but it gets us way ahead. It's better to have it there, I think, than not. So yeah, I'll stop there. I see Jenna's hand up.
Okay, and with that, Director Stoner.
Thank you through the chair, and appreciate, always want to try and keep simplicity, but I think this is one where actually articulating the detail early and before you actually need to use it is best practice. So it's important to do the hard work in advance. You don't always get it right. When you do then have to test it, you learn things. Hopefully you don't have to test it, but the reality is that these are required for a reason. And so I do think more detail is helpful, just because then everybody knows what they're walking into, and everybody knows what they're agreeing to. And apologies if I missed this, but I was curious. I saw that one of like the common practices is to do it as a policy versus a bylaw. And I was unclear if staff were proposing one versus the other, or if that's going to come back for discussion. There's lots of pieces in here, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way to help move this conversation forward at this point.
Ms. Balsham.
Yeah, I can speak to the policy versus bylaw. What we did see when we did our precursory scan is that it's almost half and half, and we see municipalities more frequently using bylaws. Regional districts seem to more frequently use policies, but it could be either or at the discretion of the committee/board. So currently, what the SLRD does have is a policy. Squamish, Resort Municipality of Whistler, Village of Pemberton have all embedded their codes of conduct within a bylaw. So really leaving that to the discretion of the board, we can do either.
I guess two things. I would personally lean a little bit towards a bylaw, just when things get contentious. I feel like you want really strong guardrails, and then when it's a policy, it feels that dynamics and political dynamics could come into play a little bit easier. And so for me, there's some comfort in a bylaw. But my recollection of our earlier discussions was that because Whistler and Squamish had both done these policies recently, in my mind anyways, we could move quickly, sort of accept one or the other almost as is and get 80% of the way there and move forward. And there was some hesitation about doing a very specific, customized version of this. And we wanted to minimize the effort. It sounds like we are, and maybe we just need to, but it sounds like we are thinking of something really tailored to the regional district out of the gate. I'm just wondering if there are perspectives on that, Director Ford.
Yeah, I remember it the same way as you do, that we didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money and time, staff time that we are limited on, when we've got very good examples of cut and paste out there, and spending new legal fees and review time. I think we can pick one and go with it, because a tremendous amount of money has already been spent by member municipalities on these projects, and I don't think we have the time or the funding to get really creative with a very unique system or policy or bylaw. I think it's a bylaw. I agree with you, Chris. And we've got examples that we can copy and paste here.
Director Stoner.
Yeah, I agree with committee colleagues that where we can replicate as much as possible, let's do it. Just on the list of less common provisions, am I right that staff are looking for some direction on which of those we may want to direct you to include? So for me, thanks for the head nod. All of these actually feel quite important for inclusion, with the exception, I believe the procedures to be followed if there's reasonable grounds to believe that criminal violations have occurred are now included in the updated community charter. And so I think that's one that we could probably leave aside. But I think the others are all ones that are worth articulating. And I think even our board has had direct experience with some of them recently. And so it's a good reason to include them. But I think most of these, I would lean towards inclusion to make it even more lengthy and wordy.
So, Ms. Belsham, can I put you on the spot? And I need to review our procedures bylaw. I started calling everyone director, and I thought, oh no, that maybe I shouldn't. And then, but should I be using director or Ms. Belsham?
Either works, thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll stay with director then for consistency in this meeting. So, Director Belsham, I wonder if you could, do you have clarity at this point, given the discussion we've just had on how deep in terms of customization the committee is asking you to go? Do you have a strong sense of that?
What I have heard is that there is leaning towards something very similar to the District of Squamish and the RMOW, Resort Municipality of Whistler. In reviewing both of those bylaws, they're actually quite similar. We have created a spreadsheet that outlines all of the common provisions that are occurring in those two bylaws. So we could currently pull something together that includes majority of that and some other common practice, also taking into consideration the other provisions that are outlined in the report. I think what we did see when we did this cursory review is the bullets in the report 1 through 13 are common in both of those bylaws that we're seeing within the municipalities and also the regional districts that we did a review of. So I think we're in a pretty good position to start moving forward with at least a draft that we can bring back to the committee that isn't going to take a lot of staff time because there are such fantastic examples currently out there. As we do know, a lot of municipalities and regional districts have been updating their code of conducts. So we've got some great examples.
Okay, thank you. Director Birch-Jones?
I was just remembering that when I read the Squamish one, there were some references and I just found it. Foundational principles under C, members are expected to perform their duties in office and arrange their private affairs in a manner that promotes public confidence and will bear close public scrutiny, and etc. And I just thought, I'm not sure that I want to bring in the private affairs to the code of conduct on the board. But, you know, maybe that's something we can talk about at the board level because there's probably different opinions on that. But I thought we were stepping out into, sort of overstepping there in this document. But we can
May
talk
I?
about.
Director Ford?
I think it's easier to have that language there and allow that to be sort of the standing, but then in the event that something happens, it's interpreted within that context, because that's exactly why we're, expected to put the fiduciary responsibility of the municipality before our own personal interests. That's where a code of conduct would be called. And so that's one example. I wouldn't want to take it out. And yes, we can certainly discuss it at the board, but I think I have a lot of comfort having that there as a provision to be considered in the whole context. rather than to take it out. And it's not meant to step into someone's personal life, but it's to say that what happens in your personal life can affect you on this board and does represent something to consider when you're making a decision. If it's a personal business interest, that's why these codes need to be comprehensive. So I'm not worried about that, is all I'm expressing.
Director Stoner?
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring up one other thing that I flagged when I reread our code of conduct. We have some language in there around like who is the spokesperson, and by our code of conduct, I meant the regional district code of conduct that we currently have, who is the spokesperson for the organization. And one of the additional bullet points speaks a little bit to provisions to address elected officials engaging in partisan political activities. But I also think that there's an overlap here that is overlap or a gap in terms of how board members should be conducting or not be conducting advocacy on behalf of the board and who the actual spokespeople are. And so we address that kind of in a social media perspective in our current code of conduct, but we don't actually address it in terms of like the spokesperson for the organization with respect to either orders of government and advocacy. So that was one that I would hope that we'd be able to clarify going forward. And I just wanted to flag that because it was something that I noticed in rereading our code of conduct.
Director Ford?
Thank you. And thanks, Director Stoner, for bringing that up, because there's certainly other policies that cover our communications, and communications can be seen as advocacy, even if it's not intended that way. And so I think that that's how we tie these documents together to indicate, you know, whether it's a code issue or it's a communications policy issue. And then where those, so to the point of the spokesperson, to the point of when the board makes statements of support or of non-support for events or community, you know, when we make a statement on behalf, certainly there are many examples when we agree as a board that we will make a statement on X, how that statement is relayed to the public and how it's interpreted by the public, whether it's an area specific or if it's the whole board feels strongly about this project. And so I think that's a communications issue and it's a code of conduct issue. And so that overlap needs to be really clearly shown, that the policy covers the what and the conduct covers the how. And I'm open to the staff coming back with that in the explanation before we make any kind of sort of final decision on that.
And just to add some more elements to the mix, I think in Squamish, for example, we recently changed, I believe, as in our policies and procedures bylaw, that the mayor may provide letters of support, I think, consistent with our OCP or other strategic direction, or there's some sort of framing there, I think, and we receive it as a council on the next agenda. So we sort of have insight into what's going on, but we sort of separate that out from just general communication, but it's sort of how we actually function as a group. And so I don't know, it may be that policies and procedures is where some of this lives too, but I do think it's really critical to sort out this piece of who is speaking for us formally. So we have a suggested motion, resolution. Does staff feel that the resolution as we have it captures the sufficiently the I guess the intent or the conversation we've had here? Or is there anything you'd like to add explicitly for clarity?
Thank you, through the chair. I believe the options outlined in the report are option number 1 is sort of what I'm hearing is that staff be directed to bring forward a draft code of conduct bylaw that incorporates foundational principles. And the 13 common provisions as outlined in the report, as well as the addition of specific less common provisions as listed in the report. And as an aside, taking into consideration the bylaws already completed by the District of Squamish and Whistler.
Director Stoner?
I was gonna move that well-articulated motion that Ms. Belsham just put together.
Okay, and Director Birchall, are you seconding?
Yes, please.
Okay, and I guess that's on page, I'm just noticing the sort of title page doesn't have that detail. That specific motion.
Option 2. In at the end of the staff report, it's option 2.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So with option 2, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. And I don't believe there's any late business. Is that correct? So I think I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Director Ford moves, Director Birchall seconds, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much.